I stumbled onto a dark secret that shattered my life into pieces. My bosses were lying to everyone: clients, investors, me. They were planning to throw me under the bus to save their own skins. And that's when I decided to get even. My name's Emily Carter, and I'm 34. I grew up in Willoughby, Ohio, a sleepy little town where time seems to stand still. One diner, one gas station, and dreams that get crushed under the weight of routine. At 24, I bolted to Chicago, clutching my marketing degree and a burning hope that the skyscrapers and city buzz would turn me into someone bigger than just a small-town girl. Now I live in a tiny apartment in Logan Square, where I hear car horns and the upstairs neighbors arguing at all hours. They never seem to sleep. My life's a blur of takeout coffee, a laptop that hums from overheating, and my cat Oscar, who gives me this judgmental stare when I drag myself home past midnight, eyes red from exhaustion and unspoken pain. I've been at BrightWave, a marketing agency, for 7 years. We promote Silicon Valley startups, crafting campaigns that are supposed to disrupt the market. Sounds glamorous, but in reality, I'm stuck at a creaky desk in an office where the AC barely works half the time, and the coffee from the machine tastes like plastic. For 7 years, I've been the one who goes above and beyond. Back in high school, I organized every event. In college, I ran the student council. After graduation, I dreamed of a career where my ideas would change the world. Instead, I'm fixing other people's screw-ups, rewriting presentations, and listening to my boss, Matt, promise that my promotion is just around the corner. Every word he says stings like a needle in my heart, reminding me I'm getting nowhere again. I don't have a husband or kids, just Oscar and a habit of falling asleep with my laptop while Netflix plays in the background, drowning out the silence that screams louder than words. I grew up in a family where work was sacred. My dad, a mechanic, came home with hands smelling of oil and preached that hard work always pays off. My mom, a school nurse, taught me to be patient and persistent. I believed them when I joined BrightWave. I believed them when I worked 60-hour weeks, saved projects, and calmed clients ready to tear up contracts. But 7 years later, I started to suspect their lessons were fairy tales that don't hold up in a world where honesty means nothing. Every night, staring at my dark ceiling, I felt an emptiness growing inside, like someone was scooping me out with a spoon. Emily, is this all you're capable of? I'd ask myself, and that question ate at me like acid, leaving only pain and doubt. The day it all began, I didn't yet know that the answer to that question would become my salvation and my weapon. I was at my desk, staring at a coffee stain on a folder Matt handed me. 7 years at BrightWave, 7 years of promises, and there it was. My 12th rejection for a promotion. 12 times I heard, "Emily, you're almost there. Just a bit more experience. Next quarter's yours." Each word hit like a hammer on glass, and that 12th one shattered me in two. I felt something break inside, like my heart decided it couldn't take the pain anymore. The promotion went to Jake Wilson, a guy who'd been with the company for just a year and a half. His big achievement? A loud laugh at company parties, a knack for throwing others under the bus, and a talent for kissing up to the right people. I watched him hand out his new business cards. Jake Wilson, Senior Marketing Manager. A year and a half. 1.5. It was like a slap in the face, my cheeks burning, tears caught in my throat. Matt looked at me with that fake smile I'd seen 11 times before. His talk of strategic decisions and future leadership sounded like mockery, like he was taunting me, knowing I'd swallow his lies for the 12th time. I wasn't listening. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might betray my rage. A storm was brewing inside me. Hurt, anger, and something else I couldn't name. I nodded, muttered, "I understand," and shuffled back to my desk, feeling my colleagues' stares burn into my back, their whispers cutting like knives. Jake was glowing, waving his business cards like they were his personal Oscar, while I was just a background player in his triumph. I looked at him, and a cold, sharp fury boiled inside me, burning everything away until only ash and resolve remained. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my living room floor, clutching a mug of wine that wasn't numbing the pain anymore. Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't cry. I was too angry for tears. Why was I being passed over? Why was I the one rewriting strategies for colleagues, saving projects at the last minute, working weekends, left with nothing? I replayed every rejection, every "Emily, show more leadership," every "now's not the time." I met their demands, learned, took initiative, but they kept moving the finish line, like they were playing a cruel game with me. I called Lisa, my lawyer friend who always knew how to listen. I poured out everything: my hurt, my exhaustion, the feeling that I was running in a hamster wheel that never stopped. My voice shook, my words jumbled, but I couldn't stop. Lisa listened until I ran out of steam, then said, "Emily, they don't value you, and they never will. It's time to change something." Her words cut like a knife, but instead of pain, I felt a spark. Tiny but hot, like a coal ready to ignite a fire. I didn't know yet that this spark would become my salvation. The next day, I went back to the office, wearing a mask of calm even though a storm raged inside. I smiled at Matt in the hallway, congratulated Jake, though every word felt like swallowing poison. I answered urgent emails, but my fingers trembled with barely contained anger. I was tired of being invisible, tired of proving my worth to people who didn't see it. I felt like a shadow, working while others reaped the rewards. And then it happened. The moment that flipped my life upside down, like a hurricane ripping the roof off a house. I was working on a report for a big San Francisco startup client, one that paid us millions for their campaign. I needed to check data in a shared server folder. I was scrolling through files when I stumbled on one labeled Confidential, Board Only. The title, Operation Mirror, hit me like a warning sign. It was a regular Tuesday. I was drained, and all I wanted was to finish the report and go home to drown my pain in wine and TV shows. But something, curiosity, intuition, fate, made me click. My fingers shook, like they knew I was standing on the edge of a cliff. When the file opened, my heart stopped, and the world around me froze. It was an email chain between our CEO, David Crow, and several key clients. They were discussing how BrightWave faked data in reports to inflate campaign results. Clients were paying millions for successes that only existed on paper. I scrolled further, and each paragraph hit like a punch to the gut. Lists of problem clients they'd been deceiving for years, plans to pin losses on employees if the truth came out. And there, among the names, was mine, Emily Carter. They were going to make me the scapegoat. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my laptop. Blood rushed to my temples, my ears ringing like a siren had gone off. 7 years I'd worked for a company that not only didn't value me, but was ready to sacrifice me like a pawn in their game. This wasn't just a missed promotion. This was betrayal. Cold, calculated, like a knife in my back I didn't see until it was buried to the hilt. I closed the file, but the truth burned inside me like a hot coal. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My world, already cracking, collapsed in an instant. I sat staring at the screen, tears welling up, but I clenched my teeth. Cry? No way. I wouldn't give them that victory. In that moment, I knew. I wasn't just going to walk away. I'd make them pay for every rejection, every lie, every chance they stole from me. I didn't storm into Matt's office with accusations. I didn't fire off an angry email to David. I said nothing. Instead, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop screen, feeling something new growing inside me. Not fear, not hurt, but a resolve, cold and sharp as a blade. Lisa was right. It was time to change something. But just quitting? That would be too easy. Too weak a blow for people who'd trampled my dignity for 7 years. I wanted BrightWave to feel what they'd lost. Not just an employee, but the foundation they stood on. I knew I was that foundation, the one who saved projects, calmed clients, kept everything afloat while others took the spotlight. Every night I studied that file, saving copies to my personal cloud. I wasn't careless. No traces on my work computer, No mistakes that could expose me. I learned which clients were being misled, which projects were on the verge of collapse, who in the company knew the truth, and who, like me, was in the dark. I mapped out dependencies. Who held BrightWave together? Me. I coordinated campaigns, solved crises, came up with solutions when things went off the rails. Without me, their perfect system would start to crack, and I was going to use that. My plan was simple but bold, like a chess gambit. I'd make myself even more indispensable, then walk away, taking everything they undervalued with me. I started documenting every move, every strategy, every call, every deal I saved. My personal database grew, but so did my fear. What if they caught me? What if I lost everything? Every night I fell asleep feeling like I was walking a tightrope over a chasm, one misstep from disaster. But I couldn't stop. Not now. I felt a strength growing inside me, mixed with anger and pain. This wasn't just revenge. It was my attempt to take back control of my life. A week after I found the file, Sarah, our new intern, approached me. She was 23, fresh out of college, and came to BrightWave with the same starry-eyed ambition I had 7 years ago. But that day, her eyes were filled with worry, like she was carrying a secret that was burning her from the inside. She held a printout of a report with numbers that didn't add up and whispered, asking if I'd noticed anything strange. My heart pounded so loud I thought she'd hear it. She knew something. I could have brushed her off, said it wasn't my business. But her eyes, full of fear, resolve, and desperation, were so familiar. They were my eyes from 7 years ago when I still believed hard work paid off. Over lunch in a cafe across the street, I took a chance. I told her about the file. Not everything, just enough to keep myself safe. Sarah listened, her face growing paler with every word, her fingers nervously twisting the edge of a napkin. When I finished, she clenched her fists so tight her knuckles turned white and said she'd noticed oddities too, but was scared to speak up. She was brilliant with data, catching inconsistencies I'd missed. We started working together, but in secret, like spies behind enemy lines. During lunch breaks in that cafe, we dissected reports, hunted for fakes, built a dossier. Sarah had an idea that made my plan even bolder. Not just leave, but set the stage for clients to leave with us. It was a risky move, like jumping off a cliff without a parachute. If we got caught, it could end in lawsuits. But I agreed, adrenaline mixing with terror. We worked only from personal devices, never talking in the office. Sarah became my secret weapon, my ray of hope in this darkness. But every time I looked at her, I wondered, could I trust her? What if she betrayed me? Those thoughts were like poison, slowly eating away at my resolve. For the next 3 months, I worked like I was possessed, teetering between genius and madness. I took on the toughest projects, solved crises, talked to clients directly, while Matt praised me in front of everyone, calling me our star. The irony tasted bitter, like the cheap coffee from the office machine. They only saw my value when I was already plotting their downfall. I documented everything. Every process, every decision, every client who thanked me personally, gripping my hand like I was their savior. My database grew, but so did the tension. I felt the office walls closing in, colleagues' glances sharpening like they knew what I was up to. One day, Matt called me into his office. His tone wasn't friendly. It was suspicious, like he was trying to catch me in a lie. "Emily, you're talking to clients too much. That's not your role." I smiled, feeling cold sweat on my back, and said I just wanted to be helpful. But that night, I noticed someone had tried to log into my work account. It was blocked. I'd changed the password a week earlier. But it was a sign, like a flashing red light. They were onto me. My heart raced like it wanted to burst out of my chest, my hands shaking as I checked my files to make sure nothing was gone. Sarah overheard 2 managers in a meeting room talking about a data leak issue and the need to tighten control. My stomach dropped. If they started checking the servers, they might see I'd accessed that file. I realized I had less time than I thought. I couldn't sleep that night. picturing David calling me into his office, his cold eyes saying he knew everything. I felt like a spy in a cheap thriller, but this was my life, and the stakes were too high. I sat in the dark, hugging Oscar, whispering, "I'll make it. I have to." But inside, fear grew that everything would collapse, leaving me with nothing but broken dreams. To throw off suspicion, I played the perfect employee, though every smile hurt. I came in early, stayed late, even brought cookies to the break room, something I'd never done. Colleagues joked I was getting too nice, but I saw Matt relax. He started praising me again, but I knew it was temporary. In secret, I was laying the groundwork to leave. I updated my LinkedIn, started quietly reaching out to former colleagues who'd moved to other companies. I wasn't job hunting. I was building a plan B, a lifeline in a stormy sea. The most dramatic moment came when David Crow, our CEO, showed up unannounced. He usually worked from San Francisco, visiting Chicago once a quarter. But that day, he prowled the floor, peering at monitors, asking questions, his presence like a shadow over us all. When he stopped at my desk, my blood ran cold. His smile was icy, his eyes like lasers trying to burn through me. "Emily, everything okay?" he asked, his voice like a warning that made my knees shake. I nodded, mumbling something about great campaign results, but inside I was screaming, "He knows! He knows!" Later, Sarah heard David and Matt discussing a data leak problem. They were close. Too close. I went home and cried for the first time in months. Not from hurt, but from fear that my plan would fall apart, leaving me with nothing. I sat on the floor, hugging Oscar, whispering, "I can't lose. Not now." One evening, working late, I got a call from an unknown number. I usually don't pick up, but something, intuition, fate, desperation, made me answer. The voice was low, almost a whisper, like they were scared of being overheard. "Emily, this is about BrightWave. Do you know what they're doing with the data?" I froze, my throat tightening, palms sweating. The caller didn't give a name but said they worked with one of our clients and knew about the fakes. They offered to send me proof, but only if I guaranteed anonymity. I agreed, though every instinct screamed it was a trap. We met at a small downtown cafe. The man, calling himself Tom, wore a dark jacket, hood up, glancing around like he expected to be followed. He handed me a flash drive with copies of emails and financial reports. It wasn't just faked data. It was proof BrightWave was systematically deceiving clients and investors. My heart raced as I went through the files that night. This was a bomb that could destroy BrightWave. But if I used it wrong, it'd blow up in my hands. I couldn't trust anyone, not even Sarah. What if she turned on me? What if Tom was a setup from David? I felt more alone than ever, but there was no turning back. I hid the flash drive in a safe I bought the next day and swore I wouldn't stop, even if fear tore me apart. I decided not to expose BrightWave publicly. It was too risky. Years of lawsuits, lawyers, ruined reputation. Instead, I used the info to strengthen my position. I started subtly hinting to key clients, those on the problem list, that their campaigns might not be as successful as they seemed. I didn't say anything outright, just asked questions. "Have you checked the data independently?" Or, "Are you happy with the ROI?" My words were seeds, planted to sprout later. Some clients started questioning BrightWave, and I saw Matt get nervous at meetings, his smile growing tighter. The office tension was like a storm about to break, and I felt like both the hunter and the prey. Sarah found a loophole. BrightWave hadn't updated contracts with some clients, and they lacked non-compete clauses. That meant I could legally work with them after leaving. We started laying the groundwork. I met clients for coffee, discussed hypothetical projects, built trust. One, a startup from Austin, said flat out, "Emily, if you leave, we're coming with you." Those words were like a breath of air after months of suffocation, a ray of light in a dark tunnel. But fear didn't let go. Every morning, I woke up thinking, today they'll catch me. Every email from Matt felt like a trap. I was on edge, balancing between hope and paranoia, but I couldn't stop. Not when I was this close. One evening, working late, Jake, the guy who got my promotion, approached me. He was drunk from another company party, his eyes gleaming, his smirk dripping with venom. "Heard you're talking to clients too much, Emily," he said, leaning so close I could smell the whiskey. "Be careful." His tone wasn't friendly. It was a threat, like he knew something I didn't. I smiled, but inside I went cold. Did he know? Or was it just drunken talk? In that moment, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to make my final move, even if it tore me apart. I sped up my plan. I registered Carter Consulting, took out a small loan, started filing paperwork. Sarah helped with data analysis, but I saw she was on edge too. One day, she admitted she was scared we'd get caught, tears in her eyes. I hugged her, saying we'd make it, but I wasn't sure myself. We were like two soldiers on a minefield, every step a potential disaster. But I knew, if I stopped, I'd never forgive myself. I sat up nights staring at my screen, my heart tight with fear and hope. I was on the brink, but I was ready. This was my war, and I was going to win it. Everything changed the evening Sarah didn't show up for our usual cafe meeting. I waited an hour, texting, calling, but she didn't answer. My heart pounded so hard I thought it'd burst. Something was wrong. I got home, panic choking me. When I opened my laptop, I found an email from an anonymous sender. Inside was a screenshot. Sarah's messages with Matt. She'd told him about our plans, my dossier, the clients I'd talked to. She didn't mention the Operation Mirror file, but it was enough to sink me. My world collapsed. Sarah, my ally, my hope, had betrayed me. I sat in the dark, hugging my knees, tears streaming down my face. Why? I'd given her a chance, trusted her, and she sold me out for a promotion I knew she'd never get. Anger and pain mixed like a toxic cocktail, but I couldn't let myself break. I changed all my passwords, moved my files to a new server I'd set up, and started thinking. Sarah didn't know everything. I'd been careful not to share details about Tom's flash drive, but she knew enough to hurt me. I had to move faster than they did. The next day, I went to the office like nothing was wrong, though a hurricane raged inside. Sarah avoided my gaze, her hands shaking as she grabbed coffee. I didn't say a word, but my look must have said it all. She knew I knew. That day, Matt called me into his office, asking weird questions. "Emily, you sure you're following the rules?" I smiled, heart pounding, and said I always followed protocol. But I knew. Time was running out. I had to make my move before they made theirs. By month 5, I was ready. Carter Consulting existed on paper. I had a business plan, a loan, and 3 clients hinting they'd work with me directly. Sarah's betrayal hurt, but it made me stronger. I didn't trust anyone but myself anymore. I picked a day, Friday, end of the quarter. That morning, I sent Matt my resignation email, copying David. I didn't make a scene, just left the letter on his desk and walked out. But before I did one more thing. I sent an anonymous email to a client whose data had been faked, suggesting they request an independent audit. I didn't sign it, left no trace. It was my parting gift to BrightWave, a spark that could ignite a fire they couldn't put out. I walked out of the office, the air feeling lighter, but fear still gripping my heart. What if they found a way to stop me? What if Sarah had told them more than I thought? But I knew. There was no going back. I'd made my choice, and now I had to see it through. The next 2 weeks were like watching a show from the front row, my fists clenched with adrenaline. Matt tried to convince me to stay, his voice shaky as he offered a promotion, bonuses, even a stake in the company. His eyes were desperate, and for the first time, I saw him not as my boss, but as a man losing control. I refused, staying calm, though inside I was singing with grim triumph. Clients started asking questions. The Austin startup requested an audit. Another from Seattle threatened to cancel their contract. David flew to Chicago for an emergency meeting I wasn't invited to. A colleague who was still my friend said David was yelling about someone betraying the company. I knew he meant me, but he had no proof. That was my ace. By the second week, the tension hit a peak. A Denver startup publicly announced they were cutting ties with BrightWave over data discrepancies. It sparked a chain reaction. Other clients started checking their reports. Matt looked like he hadn't slept in a week, his face drawn, hands trembling as he gave orders. David called me into his office and offered me a director position with a salary I'd only dreamed of. His eyes were desperate, and for the first time I saw him not as an all-powerful boss, but as a man scared of losing everything. I said no. "It's not about money," I told him. And it was true. It was about dignity, about the years they stole with their empty promises. I saw his face twist with shock and anger, and in that moment I felt free. On my last day, I left the office with one box, a few photos, my favorite notebook, and a mug that said, "Best Employee." Ironic, right? I felt both free and terrified, like I'd stepped off a cliff without knowing if there was a net below. The next day, I met my first client as the founder of Carter Consulting. Within a week, 2 signed contracts with me. A month later, a third. I worked day and night, but now it was my work, my dream, my victory. Sarah didn't join me. After her betrayal, I couldn't trust her. But I found others who believed in my vision, and we started building a company where honesty came first. BrightWave didn't go bankrupt, but their reputation tanked. Clients left, rumors of their shady practices hit the press. Matt quit 6 months later, unable to handle the pressure. David's still trying to save the company, but word is they've lost half their revenue. I don't feel guilty. They betrayed me first. For 7 years, I was their tool, used to cover their schemes. Now they were reaping what they sowed, and I could finally breathe free. Today, Carter Consulting is 12 employees strong, with an office in downtown Chicago and clients who value us for our transparency. I don't work nights anymore. Don't prove my worth. I've learned to value myself. Sometimes I look at Oscar sleeping on the windowsill and think, "Emily, you did it." Not for revenge, but for me. I cried when I signed my first contract, not from joy, but from relief, like shedding a weight I'd carried for 7 years. I cried when I opened my office because it wasn't just an office. It was my home, my place, where I finally belonged. So, how's work going for you? Do they value you? Share your story in the comments.